here addressing you, the media, and the wider public of Tobago and by extension Trinidad. Just allow me to introduce the head table to you this afternoon. On my left, we have Secretary of Health, Wellness and Family Development, Councillor Tracy Davidson Celestine. After her, we have Senator the Honorable Paula Gopi-Schoon, Minister of Trade and Industry, the Honorable Kelvin Charles, Chief Secretary of the Tobago House of Assembly, the Honorable Shamfa Kodro, Minister of Sport and Youth Affairs, Senator the Honorable Alison West, Minister in the Ministry of Finance, and the Honorable Randall Mitchell, Minister of Tourism. So without further ado, allow me to hand you over to Chief Secretary, the Honorable Kelvin Charles. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Avian. Let me say as well a pleasant afternoon to all of you, members of the media gathered here, and of course to those who are listening or following either on the television or on the internet. As Avian did indicate, a team representing the cabinet of the Government of Trinidad and Tobago did meet with a team headed by the Chief Secretary of the Tobago House of Assembly, that is, headed by the Chief Secretary, and included the Secretaries of Community Development, Enterprise Development and Culture, the Secretary for Health, Wellness and Family Development, the Deputy Chief Secretary and Secretary for Finance and the Economy, and the technical persons from the various divisions mentioned, inclusive, of course, of the Division of Tourism, Culture and Enterprise. Sorry, Tourism, Culture and Transportation. Yes. The conversation dealt primarily with decisions and actions taken and contemplated by the Government of Trinidad and Tobago in respect of the country's response to the implications of what is now commonly known as COVID-19. And the opportunity was taken to brief, in the first instance, the Tobago team, TH's team, that is, in respect of those actions. Subsequently, we met with representatives of a broad cross-section of the Tobago community. And again, they were briefed. And of course, they got the opportunity to interface with everyone and to state their concerns as well as to seek clarifications as they thought necessary. Generally speaking, the issues related to the relief of businesses and households, the question of food security, business continuity, employment, sustainability, and in a sense to ensure as far as practical that whatever fallouts that may arise are in fact taken care of by reference to the augmenting of the social programs by the Ministry of Social Development, as well as, of course, by what we propose to do at the level of the Tobago House of Assembly. Now, what I would do is I would ask Minister Gopi-Schoon to provide a brief synopsis of those pieces of information that were communicated. You know, it is said that brevity is the soul of wit. And therefore, I know that the Honourable Minister, with consummate brevity, will provide the key points that came out of both sessions today. Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon all. We're very pleased to be in Tobago. My colleagues, the Minister of Tourism, the Minister of Public Administration, and Minister in the Ministry of Finance, Minister of Sport, your own Shamfa Kodro, MP in Tobago. And so again, the approach we're going to use is a very general one by me, which will, and then to be followed by your questions. We feel that you've been very much in tune and in touch and communicated with by central government, and therefore we feel that this approach is fine. I think you almost have your questions ready for us. So generally, this COVID virus would have come upon us unexpectedly in December 2019, and the government has been responding to you largely through the Prime Minister, the Minister of Health, and also the Minister of National Security. You've been getting almost daily updates, and I'm pretty sure that you are very clear and up to date on all of the circumstances surrounding the health aspects of it all. But on last Wednesday, Minister Imbert, the Minister of Finance, would have presented the financial and economic support measures. And surrounding that, central to that, would have been the announcement by the central bank yesterday on a reduction in the reserve requirement for commercial banks from 17% to 14%, and a reduction in the repo rate by 150 basis points from 5% to 3.5%. And thereafter, we've been advised by commercial banks that this will cause an immediate reduction in the prime lending rate. We have subsequently been getting notices, and it's in the public domain, by several banks subsequent to the central bank's action. Several of them have come forward listing all of their separate arrangements, generally assisting businesses and assisting individual customers, ranging from a number of facilities, including mortgages and loans, and to, of course, Visa credit card payments and so on. So that it's been wide-ranging, and I feel pretty much that you were in touch with that. The Minister of Finance would have also announced a liquidity support loan program to the credit union movement. And that is largely to give support to individuals and small businesses who would normally not access banks. And also there is to be a loan support program for Netco. There are about, and I will quickly mention that there are about $2 million worth of business that customers have been lining up for from Netco. And the Minister of Finance is going to make available to Netco a particular amount. This has not been ironed out and determined as yet, but a particular amount to cover those persons requiring loans in the pipeline, and also for new loan applications that would be made for small businesses, micro businesses in particular, requiring support. In addition, the HDC and the Trinidad and Tobago mortgage finance companies, they've also been asked to provide an appropriate moratorium to customers who are experiencing difficulty during this period. Also, the Agriculture Development Bank, the Minister of Agriculture, Lands and Fisheries, has confirmed that they too are offering concessions to customers. And of course, on an individual basis, it is expected that the customers will approach the ADB for the new arrangements, new soft arrangements that will take place. Subsequent to that, additional to that, the Cabinet Appointed Committee on Business and Manufacturing would have been charged with the responsibility of ensuring food security, business sustainability, and employment sustainability as well. And there are a number of recommendations that would have come out from that, from the initial meeting on Wednesday afternoon. And one is to ensure, and we can give the assurance, that there is no shortage of food supplies in Trinidad and Tobago. I can say with certainty that we took a very granular and detailed approach in determining the list of basic food items. What are the quantities in the country at this time? What are the quantities on the water? Shooting for overall food security certainty for at least 6 months. And we're pretty much satisfied that there is food in the country, there's food on the way, at least for the basic items, and of course, there will be foreign exchange support, almost to the tune of $100 million to all of these importers and also manufacturers requiring input into their food and beverage sectors. That is going to be managed largely by the Exim Bank, which has been, as you know, which has been conducting a facility for financing arrangements for inputs into manufacturing, foreign currency support system. We are going to be assisting in terms of ensuring that the support is going to be given to the right particular individuals and businesses that are involved in the importation of food, cleaning supplies, and medication, all of which we term emergency supplies, so that to ensure that there's the least disruption possible in satisfying the needs of our citizens at this crucial time. In addition, we have interfaced with the Customs and Excise Division of the Ministry of Finance, Chemistry, Food and Drugs Division, and also the Plant Quarantine Services, all of which are involved in terms of expediting border clearances. And we have the expectation and the clarification and the satisfaction that they will be doing what is required of them. In addition, we also have the satisfaction from the Port Authority of Trinidad and Tobago that there will absolutely be no interruptions in service to to Tobago via the port and via the arrangements with the vessels. We have certainty from the Ministry of Works and Transport and from the port that there will be no disruption in the supply of goods to Tobago. Carl has also given us all certainty of arrangements to transport passengers from Tobago to Trinidad and vice versa. Again, so the usual service arrangements are in place, so the times, etc. But where, of course, there are empty planes, they would seek to consolidate these loads, and that is expected. Also, in terms of business continuity, particularly related to agriculture, the Ministry of Agriculture is to utilize an appropriate acreage in Chaguaramas to accelerate efforts to increase local production of fruit and vegetables, and that is short-term crops in the first instance. The ministry will also utilize a 100-acre seed bank to provide a buffer and just of supply to any shortfall from farmers, and this is going to be done at no cost to farmers as well. We've also interfaced with hire purchase companies, that is Island Finance, Standards, Courts, more than 125 customers in terms of deferrals and of loan payments on a case-by-case basis. Island Finance has specified that they will in fact give 3-month deferrals, but it's going to be done on a case-by-case basis. With regard to strengthening the social protection system, the government has agreed to provide additional food support and additional food support, additional income support, additional accommodation with regard to rental assistance, and so that where through the banks there would be mortgage assistance in terms of deferrals and softening of rates. The same, on the other hand, rental assistance of $2,500 per month will be provided to those persons needing support. Only those. Again, your persons are advised where you're in a position to meet all of your payments and so on. Please continue doing so. It's in the event that, because at some point you're going to have to deal with it. So that the idea is where you can, you do, but where you need support, the support is available from the banks, the support is available from the Ministry of Social Development as well. Generally, that's where we are, and you are invited to ask questions, and we'll be happy, my colleagues and I, to respond, especially, again, to the grant fund facility, which Cabinet has also approved a grant fund facility for the tourism sector. At this time, it is opportune in this slow period that in preparation for future business, this is not going to last forever, that this special grant facility would be made available to our hoteliers, in particular in Tobago, to upgrade their businesses in the meantime, to get ready for the new business which we expect when this is all finished. So I'd like to stop there and allow you to raise questions. But just to say that your Prime Minister, your Minister of Finance, your Minister of Health, your Minister of National Security have been speaking to the public population. Prime Minister, I think, has just finished another press conference, and it's almost on a daily it is on a daily basis that we are continuing to communicate with the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and there will be special focus to ensure that Tobago is not left out. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Minister. Question time, ladies and gentlemen. Yes.
Tourism.
Okay, so firstly, let me say that all the stakeholders that we've met with today, including the THA, are very much in support of government's response led by the Prime Minister of this COVID-19 pandemic. And the stakeholders today are very much committed to working with government to ensure that any pain or any disruption is minimized during the period of this pandemic. Now, what came out is that it has just been a matter of 6 days. It's a matter of 6 days where a number of these very important decisions have been made. The Prime Minister is particularly interested and concerned, especially with the tourism sector in Tobago, having regard to the importance of the tourism sector in Tobago. And Cabinet has agreed to provide a grant facility to ensure that there is some stimulus in terms of capital expenditure to improve the quality of room stock for Tobago hotels and accommodation providers in this downtime. What we've done is we have engaged with the hoteliers, the accommodation providers, and the associations to come up with what is the best type of grant facility for them. We don't think it will be very productive for us to tell them what we are going to give them. We are working together. We are committed to working together, and in very short order, we will have all the criteria, ensuring that it's easily accessible and ensuring that, given government's limited resources, that the best option and the best amount or the best resources can be provided.
Okay. What do you want to tell? Sorry. What do you want to tell employers? Some hotels would have already started laying off persons. And we would have received reports from 2 hotels in Tobago West that persons were sent home with no pay. What reassurances would you be able to tell these persons who were sent home? Because persons are asking, where's my next meal?
In light of the commitment and the support that was expressed downstairs, this is something that affects worldwide tourism. And the commitment that we got is that we're all in this together. Now, that matter was specifically raised, and the social safety net that was spoken about on Wednesday, and that we, again, went to pains at expressing to the stakeholders, the social safety net is to provide for such employees. The Tobago Hotel Association, as well as the Trinidad Hotel Association, they anticipate that there may be some temporary layoffs, and they have asked, they provided the correspondence to the Ministry of Tourism. They asked that social programs be afforded to the employees of the hoteliers and the tourism businesses, and that is done. So many of the things that they have asked for was already provided.
And at least how soon will these things be rolled out? Because we are hearing the promises, but we don't know when the rollout is.
Well, again, it's just been a matter of 6 days. The Minister of Social Development and Family Services and the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services are rolling out all these matters as we speak.
How soon in terms of Tobago, and do you have like a total as to how much monies will be expended to Tobago to treat with this?
Okay, so we go to Parliament on Wednesday of next week to deal with the financing for these measures. So shortly thereafter, we should be able to actually put the measures in place. And in the meantime, we are moving ahead with determining what structures we set up to allow us to expeditiously implement. What I would like to say is that in our discussions with the business community that we held in Tobago between Monday and Wednesday, we requested of them and received their support in terms of this crisis. We said to them, as Minister Mitchell just said, we have to be in this together. It can't be that all of the burden of this period falls on one entity. So we have asked the business community to the extent that they can to support their employees, at least through the initial stages of this issue. The TT Chamber and the Manufacturers Association have committed to have their members keep their employees on the payroll for at least another month while we assess where we are going with this. And we are asking the business people in Tobago, to the extent that they can, to do the same thing. Where they can't, the government measures will come in and the bank measures will come in to provide some support and bridge the gap.
Yeah, what I could add, Elizabeth, is that we have decided that in the Division of Health, Wellness and Family Development, we'll create a dedicated track so that these persons can use that mechanism to submit their applications and have it dealt with speedily by reference to the arrangement with the Ministry of Social Development. And an appropriate advisory would go out early next week, if not Monday and Tuesday, so that persons will know where to go to do the applications. Once Cabinet Parliament would have done with the measures and so on.
And staying with you, Mr. Chief Secretary, also as Education Secretary, hundreds of Tobago's children are now home with respect to the school feeding program, because a number of children have reached out to us at TV6 with respect to where their next meal would be. How soon?
Did you say hundreds of students? It's interesting because hundreds of students have not reached out to the division. But what I can tell you is that consistent with the national policy where persons in need, yes, and who would have benefited from the school feeding program and are so desirous of continuing, they will be absorbed into the food card program. And I can tell you, as of yesterday, I had the school supervisors liaising with the principals to specifically identify these children so that we can move speedily to treat with that. I can say as well that we have, I think it was 2 offers from well-wishers who are willing to contribute by reference to providing meals to some of these students. So we are going to do the due diligence to ensure that those facilities are consistent with what is required at this time. And once those are up to standard, we shall also utilize those kinds of services. Because may I make the point that what that does or signals is the willingness of people to come forward to be part of the process, consistent with the appeal that we are in this thing together.
Hi, good afternoon, members of the head table. What assurances can you give with regards to the inter-island vessel, particularly with cargo to Tobagonians? Why I'm asked, yesterday we had an incident, boat was delayed, and the resulting impact, boat delayed, goods can't come up on time. Yesterday no passengers were allowed to come up with the cargo. What you want to say to Tobagonians with regards to that?
Well, yesterday was an isolated event. And as you know, a crew member fell ill. and it's in the interest of all on board. But of course, it turned out that he didn't have COVID-19. But in the health interest of everyone on board, those were the unusual circumstances with the vessel yesterday. They are back on track. And I actually have a statement from the port. They have released a statement, but that apart, they have assured us of the continuation of services as usual. Today, you would have had your normal service. If you just give me a moment. Yes. There are 2 passenger ferry sailings from Port of Spain and 2 from Scarborough daily, as per the schedule in releases. Wednesday only has 1 sailing each way due to the maintenance day for the, I think it's the JDVLV.
As well as the statistics show.
And the TT Spirit as well. That's right. The cargo vessel, MV Cabo Star, is sailing daily, 1 from Port of Spain and 1 from Scarborough, but cargo only, so that the truckers are putting the cargo on the Cabo Star, and they are being transported on the ferry. So they're very clear arrangements, and there should be absolutely no disruption with supplies to Tobago.
Good afternoon. For the next Devore from 91.9 FM, I want to direct this question to Minister Mitchell. With respect to the grant and facilities being put in place to support persons who would be displaced from this pandemic, I haven't heard per se any direct mention for people who work specifically with tourism products, divers, glass bottom boat operators, people who make crafts, and that particular kind of thing. Does the facility consider those persons? We've heard about hotels and guest houses.
Which facility? Grant facility?
The grant facility, only support for those business persons that operate glass bottom boats, divers, etc.
No, the announcement by the Prime Minister was specifically for the accommodation properties, the grant facility for the accommodation properties. However, what we spoke about with the stakeholders was there are a number of other incentives that are presently provided by the Ministry of Tourism, and we are going to relook those, the criteria, the accessibility, and see if we can improve the ease of doing business and the ease of access to many of these other products. For example, the government loan guarantee program, where government guarantees the loans of tourism accommodation providers as well as tourism-related businesses up to $10 million, as well as subsidizes the interest rates. So we're going to relook that program. Under the Tourism Development Act, there are many incentives that are provided, and we are going to relook how we can improve the accessibility by the tourism providers, tourism stakeholders in Tobago to those incentives.
Just to add to that, we had the pleasure of having Financial Secretary Jack at our cabinet meeting on Wednesday, where we were discussing these measures in detail. And one of the things that the Prime Minister did on that occasion was to ask the Secretary to come up with a list of measures specific to Tobago for our further consideration. So we had the meeting to discuss measures that Tobago is looking at, and we're also waiting on the formal submission by the THA for further measures to deal with the Tobago particular situation.
Thank you. And just to go across to the Secretary for the Division of Health, Wellness and Family Development, yesterday at the press conference, we mentioned the pandemic leave, and I'm just interested to find out how the pandemic leave transitioned into Tobago, its acceptance, and whether the pandemic leave is working in Tobago for persons affected by COVID-19.
Yes. Just to say, on pandemic leave, we prefer not to deal with any specifics at this time. I'll tell you that the committee came up with the proposals last Saturday. It went to NTAC, the proposals, so that we can be informed by business and labor. Following from that, it came to Cabinet, and it's now going to go to the Finance and General Purposes Committee on Monday morning for the detailed look at each of all of the issues falling under it. So you can expect something from us early next week about the details of it. We wouldn't want to offer any positions that, probably may change or so. Yeah, but it's receiving the close attention and urgent attention of the Cabinet.
Okay, good afternoon. My question is for Minister Gopiskun. You indicated that the country we have enough food supply to last at least 6 months. But there is the case of panic buying a lot both in Trinidad and Tobago. Have you all discussed any restrictions with the supermarkets, as the case may be, to alleviate the running out? Because we are saying we have, but persons are overbuying, they are stocking up. What can you give any guarantees?
But let me clarify. What I confirmed is that there's 2 to 3 months supply in the country, but there are continual shipments on the way. And with the foreign exchange intervention of close to 100 million, which Minister of Finance has spoken of, it means that those persons who would have been restricted from getting more orders, would have their bills to clear. Now that they can clear their bills in the foreign jurisdictions, they can then expect to have more orders on the way. So the line of sight for us is that there's a 6 months supply of food in the country generally. So you still have things coming in and so on. No, we have not dictated to supermarkets that they should offer restrictions on particular products, but I note that some supermarkets have done it. Price Mart has done it, and I think it's only fair. I mean, we will not intervene, but I think it's only fair, because what you have is those who have and are buying 12 of something when they should buy 3 of it and leave it for somebody else. That is really unreasonable. I mean, when you look at a thing like hand sanitizers, everybody wants to have hand sanitizers, but those can afford will buy a case. And that's so unfair. But and let me just say on that point that our local manufacturers are stepping up to the plate. And I think there's somebody in Tobago, the gentleman I would have spoken to, J-Mark, is it? I think so. Yeah, so J-Mark is also producing hand sanitizers. So I know that's for Tobago. But again, the supermarkets are going to, at their discretion, impose some restrictions. We are not getting involved in that. Some of them are saying we have shortages in a few things. Well, perhaps they have not stocked up enough. These are the particular smaller supermarkets, but we have asked, as I said, we have asked the TTMA and the Chamber to please ensure that supermarkets across Trinidad and Tobago are offered supplies and not just the main supermarkets. Then all this overbuying and panic buying, which is not necessary, again, it means that if they panic buy and they stock up in their homes, it means that they will not need groceries for the next 2 months, right? So even though you may see less on the shelves, it means that the stock is really in their homes. Yeah?
Okay, so just to add a couple of things to that, we really want to appeal to people to be reasonable. There are 1.3 million people in Trinidad and Tobago, and we all want to protect ourselves from COVID-19, and we all want to be able to eat and drink while we go through this. So please be reasonable in your buying. Yes. Secondly, we are aware of the concerns regarding being able to continue to feed the nation over this period, because it is not only a matter that is affecting Trinidad and Tobago. Countries around the world have people who are hoarding food and demanding more and so on. And unfortunately, a lot of our food is still imported. So the Minister of Agriculture has been given a mandate to start immediately a program to plant short crops to supplement what we import. And we are also looking at doing the same thing in Tobago. He also has a mandate to make seeds available to farmers who are interested in expanding their production and to individuals who want to start kitchen gardens. All of that with the aim of ensuring that we have enough to eat while we go through this period.
I have another question. And with the increase, with the panic buying, we are seeing the play of demand and supply happening, and persons the supermarkets in particular, you are seeing price gouging. So have you all discussed this with the supermarkets? Because we are seeing almost 150% increases on certain items right here in Tobago in some cases.
But that's unfortunate. That is really, really very unfortunate. And early up, I think it was last week, Thursday, I held a press conference with the Consumer Division from the Ministry and also the Fair Trading Commission. And we attended to the matters of price gouging and so on. As you know, price gouging is not illegal. It's not. But we, of course, have appealed to the good graces of the supermarket owners and so on, that they should not do that. What we've found is that there are instances where some things would have been brought in by air freight rather than sea freight. So there's a natural cost attached to that, but that would cause some food and some price increases. But really and truly, what you're telling me about 150%, I am in shock. That should not be so. We've made this appeal. Don't be unreasonable, because we're going to name and shame. The Consumer Affairs Division, our members have been in supermarkets this week, and I would want to think that those in Tobago are also doing the same thing. And we are going to publish so that the consumer has a choice of where they're going to make their purchases and how they're going to make these purchases. At the end of the day, you have to live through these circumstances. If somebody has something that is selling at an exorbitant price, please don't buy it. Please don't. And we are going to be putting on social media the comparison of prices and that are there for the consumer. But the consumer is uppermost in our minds. And of course, at the level of the Fair Trading Commission, we are looking out for those that are price fixing and that kind of thing. Those that are making a special contract arrangement with special conditions, you don't buy, if I'll pay you 50,000, only sell my products, don't sell another brand. Those are the kinds of things that the Fair Trading Commission will be looking at. Those who say, okay, I will sell in one location, you will sell in another location. By that, because then the supermarket owner so they can't say, well, can I buy, let me shop around and see what's available. Then that's not the case, because you have already decided, oh, I'm only going to sell this area and you sell another area. You see all of that? Fixing of locations, price fixing, and conditions attached to contracts. There's a fine attached to that. I think it's something like 10% of your annual turnover or something like that. So this commission is now fully operational, the Fair Trading Commission, and they are in the field. Encouraging rather than being a policeman, but encouraging people to do the right thing.
My final question is for Secretary of Health, Mrs. Iverson Celestine. Our newsroom have been inundated with a lot of calls over the past 24 to 48 hours. And this is in relation to persons who may have traveled to destinations that have positive cases of COVID-19. Persons who are in Tobago right now and who are expected to be in self-isolation, and they are not. Is there anything at this point in time to ensure or put in place to ensure that persons who are supposed to be, isolating, to do that at this time?
We currently have quarantine facilities in place, but if you know of any such persons, please allow them to, please ask them to share their information with us in the Division of Health and Wellness, so that we can treat with it as soon as is possible.
Yes.
Good afternoon. Akinlabi Hula, Tobago Channel 5 News. These questions are for Minister Gopi Schoon. I'm not sure if you can answer, but I think you're the best suited person. The government would have said they would approach banks to about loan deferrals. Just for clarification, are those loan deferrals across the board, or are they just for persons who would have come under financial strain due to the restrictions put in place with the COVID-19 situation?
Right. And indeed, subsequent to the central bank adjusting rates and so on. Almost all of the banks have come out and they've made media statements. The media releases are there about what they are prepared to do in terms of waivers of fees, softening of interest rates, deferral of loans, etc., deferral of mortgages. Your mortgage rates automatically have gone down, and they would be advising customers on that. But each of the banks, with their individual positions, have come out to the public to say what they can do. So generally, those are available, and I can't say, I have to be very careful about speaking for one institution rather than the other. And also, I want to say again, with the hire purchase arrangements, courts, because these are the people's banks, in a sense, courts, Island Finance, and also standards. All of them have made their offerings in terms of dealing with the customer on a case-by-case basis. Island Finance has said 3 months deferrals, but again, they would want those persons to come in to discuss the arrangements and so on.
But I suspect as well that since you asked the question and you're representing a newsroom, what needs to be emphasized is that deferrals are not waivers. And it's easy for us to miscommunicate. So that people need to recognize that if they're facilitated by deferrals, they would have to pay at a later time. And in that regard, I remember the Honorable Prime Minister signaling that if you can afford to pay. And that needs to be said very forcefully.
Thank you very much. Minister, concerning the foreign exchange injection, I know that the Secretary of Finance would have said earlier this week that they would appeal for a certain allocation to be made for Tobago importers. I don't know if that discussion was had and if you have a figure that you could share with us.
No, but we have an overall figure of about, and Minister was thrown to the press and came up with a figure of about almost 100 million. And I think he's right based on what we've looked at in terms of 2019. So Tobago's importers would be considered as well. So they would make their case. I don't, it hasn't been rolled out. I would imagine it'll be rolled out pretty soon, but they will be in a position to make their case to the Exim Bank. And of course, some of them will also be getting foreign exchange from their personal bankers. So that is on.
Okay.
There's something I wanted to add as well, because I'm not sure if you're aware of it, that the Ministry of Works and Transport have also introduced a 5-month waiver on the renewal of your driver's permit. I'm not sure if you saw that one. So that the holders of driver's permits, taxi driver's licenses, badges, certificates, and other documents issued by the licensing authority that expire during the period 27th of March 2020 to 31st of July 2020 shall be deemed to be valid until 31st of August 2020 or a later date as the Minister of Works and Transport may specify. So again, those persons do not have to think about going in to renew their driver's permit during that period. And that one is more attractive. It's not a deferral. You actually go get off there for a few months. So it will be deemed to be valid, and no worries. You go back in after the period, after 31st of August, and then do your renewals.
Okay, final question for the Chief Secretary. It was mentioned today that they plan to set up what I believe would be a mega farm in Chagaramas. Am I correct?
Yes.
Short crops first. And it was also mentioned that there was a plan to execute it in Tobago as well. Was the discussions concerning that mega farm in Tobago just had today, or did the Executive Council discuss it previously?
Well, I didn't understand the minister to say they're going to set up a mega farm in Tobago, because what I know is that we will ramp up our production capability, particularly at Loridor and Goldsboro. That is what we will do. I can tell you as well that I propose to meet with the Agricultural Society early next week, once we could mutually agree on a date and time, because it is their members who at the end of the day would have to commit to the production of more food. You are aware that over the last couple months in Tobago, we had sought to ramp up our food production capacity and initiatives because we had URP, for example, extending their reach into that area. And I'm sure by now you may have participated in consuming some of those pawpaw that we grew at Roxborough. If not, you have lost out. Yeah, but we, and in addition to that, we will also ramp up our production of seedlings. We are committed to looking at the whole issue of making some of those seedlings available at tremendously reduced costs, not only to farmers, but to persons like yourself who I know are interested in backyard gardening, so that you can minimize the impact of COVID-19 on your ability to feed yourself.
This question is staying with you, Mr. Chief Secretary. With respect to 3 stranded passengers, 1 from Tobago and 2 others from Trinidad. I don't know if you're aware of them. They were supposed to come in with the other 68 passengers in Trinidad, but now they have been transferred to Argentina. They were once on a cruise, and now they are stranded. I don't know if you're aware.
I have absolutely no idea of what you're talking about.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know, Dr. do you have any information on that?
Yes, so yes, so these are persons who were on the cruise ship outside of Martinique. The 68 that were evacuated because they were all part of one group. So 3 persons were left back, but arrangements are being made separately to get them back. Yeah.
My question is for Secretary Davidson Celestin. Can you give us an update on the persons who are quarantined in Tobago at this time, please?
In terms of providing you with information, there are so far 16 persons quarantined at a very secure facility, and they will be there for a period of 14 days, and they are under observation. None of them so far have shown any signs of any flu-like symptoms or anything of that sort, but as a part of the protocol, we have to ensure that we do this to, mitigate and manage the COVID situation as much as possible.
All right, and my other question is for Mr. Charles. Now, this situation is one with the THA with some employees at the Division of Agriculture, and they are indicating that they have not been paid for the past 4 fortnights. They are saying that we are in a crisis, and they are unable to fend for themselves because they cannot pay their loans, they cannot do any stocking up to safeguard themselves. Can you give us an update as to when these individuals would be paid their salaries, their outstanding salaries, please, and what may have been the cause for this? Thanks.
Well, what I can say to you is that I'm aware that requests for releases have been made, and those releases, Joel, yeah? Those releases have been honored, those requests?
Thank you, Chief. Just to inform that the releases were issued today, but the payments for outstanding salaries for those workers have started, and thus far Agriculture has informed me that at least 3 fortnights have already in the bank, payments are already issued in the bank, and the 4th and 5th fortnights are outstanding, and they're processing them, so by next week. There was an administrative delay, and again, we regret the delay in terms of payments. As you're aware, we are ensuring that we maintain that 10 working day payment window, and that we have put things in place in the past, such as the ACH, to ensure that our employees are paid on time. So again, that matter is being addressed, and as it relates to the suppliers, we are working on ensuring that all outstanding suppliers are paid during this period. And again, with the support of central government, and we will receive the necessary supplemental funding to treat with the critical and major issues as it relates to the COVID-19 virus and all the supporting mechanisms.
My question is for Minister Mitchell. There were some Caribbean countries, well, Antigua and Barbuda in particular, were very hesitant to close their doors to tourists, given the importance of tourism to their economy. In speaking with the hoteliers, the Tourism Association here in Tobago, what was the concern in terms of, shutting the doors and the impact directly on those who involved in that industry?
Well, I can't speak to what the other islands did, but I can tell you that the stakeholders were very much in support of government and government's decisions and how proactive we were in trying to ensure the safety and security of the citizens, which really is paramount. I mean, the economy, the health sector, and the dangers that this pandemic poses to that far outweigh the benefits that may accrue to the tourism sector, because we're all in this together, and we're all at danger if this were to really hit Trinidad and Tobago.
My second question may seem a little cynical, but I know it's all about challenges. We're all coping with trying to find the best solution to the circumstances we are faced with. But any positives you all are seeing? I mean, you all are here in Tobago. What positives are you all seeing despite the obvious threat of the coronavirus?
I can speak to that. I mean, I can report that the Tobago Hotel and Tourism Associations have been very, very, very proactive in reporting to the Ministry of Tourism the types of incentives that they would like to see in getting out of this thing together. What we spoke about preparing for after the COVID pandemic, after this period, and the types of stimulus, for example, a staycation, a massive staycation, certain specific promotions to get the tourism sector back up and running. So to answer your question in a nutshell, as the Prime Minister stated, we have a number of strengths here in Trinidad and Tobago, and the number one strength that I saw demonstrated downstairs was really the resilient spirit of our people.
And if I could just add to that more generally, I think we really need to acknowledge and praise the people of Trinidad and Tobago in general for coming forward, offering to help, offering to sacrifice their own profits and so on to get us through this thing. The business people have been very accommodating. The banks have been accommodating. And I just want us to continue along that spirit, because together we can come out of this with very little damage to Trinidad and Tobago.
All right, for the next of all, again, just this question may be directed at Assemblyman Jack. Can we feel confident to say that based on the cancellation of jazz and any other public activities that would have been cancelled amid the COVID-19, that the funds that would have been allocated for those events would go into the response? Can we feel confident to say that?
Well, not only those resources, but we are looking at the entire budgetary picture. We are recalibrating. And on Wednesday, when we meet in the Executive Council, we'll be reprioritizing as we prepare the policy document and our request to send to central government. But as an assembly, we have a responsibility to the people of Tobago to ensure that we allocate the necessary resources immediately to ensure that all the protocols, that all the measures are in place to fight the COVID-19. So not only those resources that might have been allocated for jazz and Easter and so on, but we are planning and ensuring that we reprioritize and we put the necessary measures in place.
Just one final question, and it's a global question basically for the entire panel, and anybody could choose to answer. Do you feel confident that the response the Trinidad and Tobago government inclusive of THA and all the different parties that are responding, do you feel confident that the response that we have offered is sufficient? And how much more work do you anticipate there is to be done to respond to COVID-19? We've seen the downfall that has taken place, Italy, the USA, and many other territories. Do you feel confident that the work that has been put in so far is sufficient? And is there more work to be done? How much more work you feel there is needed to be put into this response?
I think the government of Trinidad and Tobago, and I'm not seeking to pat myself on the back, has done a very good job in controlling the virus so far and putting things in place to provide relief. What we need to understand about COVID-19, however, is that the future is uncertain. So yes, there's a lot of work to be done. It is something that we have to keep reviewing, coming back to, questioning, and adjusting as the circumstances change so that we can continue to stay on top of it.
So we have one final question.
But
Okay.
before
May I add?
that, yeah.
Oh, sorry. That with all the best efforts of the government, because the government could give you all the necessary measures, this is a moving target, and it is very, very fluid. The situation we had 2 days ago is different from the situation we have today. You have new occurrences, new developments taking place nationally and internationally. With the best efforts and intention of the government, that's one thing, but I think the people, the general public, have a role to play in maintaining proper hygiene, in following public guidelines, public health guidelines to secure us and to keep us safe. This morning we went to Parliament and passed the legislation to ensure that clubs and cinemas and bars are closed. Yes, and we're asking stakeholders to cooperate. I know in Tobago, yes, there is less panic, but I think we need to take it seriously. We need to take this issue seriously in reaching out to constituents over the last couple of days. The response, for the most part, has been, we are right in Tobago, man. We don't have a case as yet, and I feel some type of relaxed feeling, a sort of laissez-faire feeling among Tobagonians because we feel like we haven't had a case. I think we ought to be more responsible. We have to pay more attention to what's taking place. I'm not saying to panic, because we're not trying to get you to panic, but we want you to take this very, very seriously. Practicing simple things like washing your hands, sanitizing, and so on, and avoiding touching your faces. Simple little guidelines like that. If we can share that with our populations, with the children, especially with the older folk, that would be helpful. I've seen in Trinidad where some business places are dedicating the first hour of the day or the first 2 hours of the day to the elderly. We have to remember the elderly also. So for us here in Tobago, I want to encourage people to really practice social distancing. And even though we haven't had a case as yet, that doesn't mean that we are immune. Though bars have closed, I saw a video of young men in my community yesterday, at least 15 of them gathering and liming and drinking and so on. And we ought to just really be aware of the situation and take it very seriously. We have the opportunity of not having a case yet, and we have the opportunity to practice safe personal hygiene and listen to public safety guidelines to prevent having a case or too many cases. It's not just about your immunity or how strong your system is. We are trying to avoid that unnecessary pressure on the Tobago medical system, on the national medical system, and that is very, very critical for us to do what we ought to and what we can in flattening the curve. Thank you.
We have one final question.
And it's to you, Madam Minister of Sports. Sporting venues have been closed across the nation. I read an article, I wasn't too sure. Just need some clarification. Any arrangement for elite athletes to use the facilities, particularly those who are preparing for the Olympics, should it come off?
We're doing on a case-by-case basis for elite athletes who are preparing for the Olympics, for them to make their request to the Sport TT in Trinidad for the facilities in Trinidad, and to the Dwight York Stadium facility manager here in Tobago. So we're making arrangements and preparations and accommodating the elite athletes who are preparing for the Olympics.
Before your closing words, Chief Secretary, Mr. Extavo asked about the pandemic leave, and I know Minister Schoon spoke about it, but I just want to inform you that the Chief Administrator did issue a circular yesterday, and that's specifically for THA and public servants, and that really presents some guidelines in terms of how managers and supervisors are supposed to operate in the workplace. So it does specifically state that the permutations of pandemic leave are still being worked on by Cabinet, but in terms of things like social distancing and how we deal with whether we introduce shift systems and that kind of thing in the workplace, it offers some guidelines that managers and supervisors can use. So if you did not receive it, you can contact the Office of the Chief Administrator at 639-3421, extension 5001.
Thank you very much, Avian. And let me, in closing, thank all of you, members of the media, for your prompt response to today's invitation. Let me also thank the ministers sitting at the head table, including, of course, Minister Shamfa Kojo, who couldn't wait to finish her stint at Parliament to get back to Tobago to join us here. So thank you all very much. And, of course, I think the missive, if I were to call it that, by Shamfa is particularly important, because at the end of the day, it really rests on our individual behaviors. Today I was in the meeting and I saw a call coming from one of my secretaries, and I indicated that I was in the meeting and couldn't take the call, and he texted me because he was angry because he was saying that he was passing at what appeared to be a funeral, and the gatherings that he was saying he couldn't understand. You know, why so many people were there, notwithstanding the exhortations and the appeals for us to manage that process. So we are the ones who will, at the end of the day, determine our success or failure in respect of our fight against COVID. And that message needs to go out there to all and sundry. We must take this thing seriously, and we must do what we have to do. So again, thank you all for coming, and have a good evening.